I overheard my husband on the phone. "By next month, everything will be mine." He hung up and kissed my forehead. I smiled back and quietly hired a private investigator. 3 days later, the investigator called and said, "Ma'am, you need to see this right now." What he showed me made my blood run cold. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching, get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. The ceramic mug was warm against my palms. I carried it down the hallway, the plush carpet silencing my steps. A wedge of light spilled from Marcus's study door, left ajar. The familiar scent of his sandalwood cologne mixed with the rich aroma of the coffee. It was our evening ritual. I would bring him his drink, he would kiss my forehead, and we would discuss our days. A simple, comforting punctuation to the evening. I was about to push the door open with my elbow when his voice stopped me. It was low, confidential, a tone I knew well from his business calls. But the hour was late. I paused. The words were not meant for me. "Understands nothing. She's too wrapped up in her little crafts." A short pause, then a low chuckle that held no warmth. "The valuation came through today. It's even better than we projected. With the prenup clause we're activating." "Yes, exactly. By next month, everything will be mine." The silence that followed was a physical thing. It filled the hallway, pressed against my eardrums. I heard the soft click of the call disconnecting. The door opened fully then. Marcus stood there, his phone still in hand. His face, so often sharp with focus, softened into a smile when he saw me. He took the mug from my stiff hands. "There's my love," he said, his voice warm and smooth, the perfect counterfeit of affection. He leaned in and kissed my forehead. His lips were dry. The sandalwood scent, usually so comforting, now felt dense and cloying. "Thank you, Vive, you're an angel." I made my face arrange itself into a smile. It felt brittle like glass. "Long day." My own voice sounded distant, borrowed. "The usual," he said, sipping the coffee. "But it's all falling into place, big things ahead." He looked at me, his eyes crinkling at the corners. He was handsome. I noted the fact dispassionately, as if assessing a portrait. "You look tired. Get some rest. I'll be up soon." I nodded, unable to speak further. I turned and walked back down the hallway. My steps were even, measured. I climbed the stairs. I entered our bedroom. I closed the door. The click of the latch was a definitive sound. Then, and only then, did I allow my body to react. My hands trembled. I sat on the edge of the bed, the cool silk of the duvet cover under my fingers. I stared at the opposite wall, at a framed abstract painting we had chosen together. I felt a cold clarity wash over me, numbing the initial spike of panic. "By next month, everything will be mine." The words replayed in my mind. I examined each one. Everything. Our home, purchased with the proceeds from my first major wholesale contract. My business, Thorn and Bloom, built from a single stall at a weekend market. My investments, my savings. Mine. He did not say asterisk or asterisk. He said mine asterisk. I replayed the preceding sentence. The prenup clause we're activating. Our prenuptial agreement was straightforward. What we brought into the marriage remained separate. What we built together was shared. I brought the blueprint and seed capital for Thorn and Bloom. He brought his salary and a modest portfolio. The business was unequivocally mine, legally and in practice. What clause could he possibly activate? The other phrase stuck like a burr. She's too wrapped up in her little crafts. A dismissive, contemptuous reduction of 12 years of work, of early mornings and late nights, of building a brand respected by designers and homeowners. Little crafts. I felt a spike of something hot and sharp, but I forced it down. Rage was a luxury. It clouded judgment. What I needed was ice. I stood and walked to the window. Our neighborhood was quiet, elegant houses set back from the street, illuminated by subtle landscape lighting. A gilded cage, I thought. I had always felt pride in this home. Now I saw its boundaries. Marcus came to bed an hour later. He slid under the covers and reached for me, his body warm. I shifted, feigning sleep, and he turned over. I lay awake, listening to his breathing even out. I reviewed our recent interactions. The increased questions about my business cash flow. His offer to help streamline my accounting, which I had politely declined. His suggestion, just last week, that we consider merging our financial portfolios for simplicity and greater growth. My refusal had been met with a shrug and a smile. "Just a thought, my love. You're the boss." The pieces connected with a quiet, logical click. This was not a crime of passion. It was a corporate raid, a hostile takeover of a life, my life. The betrayal was profound, but beneath it, a more unsettling truth settled. I had not seen it. I, who prided myself on reading people, on understanding the subtext of a client's email, had missed the subversion in my own home. The humiliation burned colder than the anger. As the first gray light of dawn touched the windows, I reached a conclusion. This was not a matter for tears or confrontations. Not yet. A confrontation required evidence, and I had only a whispered sentence. He had a plan, a timeline, and a lawyer. I needed my own. I would have to become a stranger in my own life. I would observe, record, and investigate. The loving wife would continue her performance. But a second woman, a colder, sharper version of myself, would now share this space. She would not panic. She would plan. When Marcus awoke, I was already in the kitchen. I handed him his green smoothie. "Morning," I said, my voice calm. I met his eyes and smiled. It was a different smile from the night before. That one had been brittle. This one was a mask, carefully fitted. "Sleep well?" he asked, kissing my cheek. "Like a log," I replied. The lie was smooth and easy. It was the first deliberate move in a game I had not chosen to play, but I would learn the rules. I would master them. And by his deadline, nothing would be his. The mask did not slip. I performed the morning rituals with precision. I smiled at Marcus over breakfast. I discussed a new linen collection with my design team on a conference call, my voice steady. Inside, my mind was a vault methodically sorting information. The first item to secure was external, professional validation. I needed to know if my interpretation of those whispered words was correct. I needed proof. My search began during my lunch break, in my home office with the door locked. I used my personal laptop, never the one connected to our shared network. I researched private investigators. I avoided the flashy, advertised firms. I looked for discretion, experience in financial and marital cases, and a reputation for integrity. It was a difficult combination to ascertain from online reviews alone. I found a forum for small business owners, one with a private, off-topic section for advice. A query posted years ago, answered by a few, mentioned a name with respect, Elijah Grant, a retired detective now running a small firm. The recommendations were not effusive but specific. Words like thorough, ethical, and unflappable were used. I noted the contact details for Grant investigations. I called from a prepaid mobile phone I purchased that afternoon at a store across town. A man answered on the third ring. His voice was low, calm, and devoid of salesmanship. "Grant Investigations." "I was given your name," I said, my tone businesslike. "I require discreet consultation regarding a domestic financial matter. Are you available for a meeting tomorrow?" There was a brief pause. "I have an opening at 10 a.m. Do you have the address?" "I do." "I'll see you then." He hung up. The exchange lasted less than 20 seconds. It was efficient. It inspired a flicker of confidence. The following morning, I told Marcus I had a meeting with a potential textile supplier in the city. He nodded, distracted by his own tablet. "Drive safe," he said, not looking up. The offices of Grant Investigations were in a modest brick building downtown, sandwiched between a printing service and an accountant. The lobby was quiet. The door to Suite 204 was plain, with frosted glass. I entered. The room was orderly but not sterile. A worn, comfortable-looking chair faced a solid oak desk. Filing cabinets lined one wall. On another, framed photographs showed a man with a kind-faced woman and two teenagers at various ages, all with genuine smiles. The window looked out onto a quiet side street. A man stood up from behind the desk. He was in his late 50s, with close-cropped gray hair and a steady gaze. He wore a simple button-down shirt. He did not smile, but his expression was open, attentive. "Ms. Thorne, I'm Eli Grant." He gestured to the chair. "Please." I sat, placing my hands flat on my knees to still them. They were steady. I had prepared what to say. "Thank you for seeing me on short notice," I began. "My situation is sensitive. I believe my husband is planning to defraud me. I need to know if I am correct, and I need evidence." Eli Grant sat back down, steepling his fingers. "Define defraud." He stated in a private phone call I overheard that by next month, everything I own would be his. He referenced activating a clause in our prenuptial agreement. My business, my assets, are legally separate. I need to understand his plan and document it. I presented the facts as I would a business report. I outlined our financial structures, my ownership of Thorn and Bloom, the prenuptial terms, our shared and separate accounts. I described Marcus's recent behavior, the increased financial interest, the suggested mergers, the dismissive comment about my work. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I presented a hypothesis supported by observational data. Eli listened without interruption. He took notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he was silent for a moment. "You've built a significant enterprise," he said finally, his eyes on the notes. "Yes." "And you believe your husband views it as a target for acquisition." "I do." The phone call indicated a timeline and a legal strategy. "I am not here for marital counseling. I am here for intelligence." He gave a single, slow nod. "The first step is confirmation. We will need to conduct financial tracing discreetly. We will need to identify the attorney he referenced. This will require access to certain records. Do you have authority over your joint financial statements?" "I do." "Good. I will provide you with a list of specific documents. Bring copies, not originals. We will also need to establish surveillance patterns, his movements, his meetings. This is a slow process. It requires patience." "I understand," I said. The cold clarity I had felt the first night solidified further. This was a project plan. I had a project manager. He quoted a fee structure. It was substantial, but not exorbitant. I agreed without hesitation. The cost of ignorance would be far higher. "There is one more thing," I said. I opened my bag and withdrew a recent photograph of Marcus. It was from a charity gala. He was smiling, handsome, charming. "This is him." Eli took the photograph. He studied it for a few seconds, then placed it face down on the desk. His manner was not dismissive, but deliberate. "I will need more, but this is a start." We scheduled our next contact, a secure email drop for the documents, followed by a meeting in 1 week. As I stood to leave, he spoke again. "Ms. Thorne, this process can be difficult. Emotions are to be expected. But the most important thing now is your behavior at home. You must maintain normalcy. Any change in your demeanor could alert him and complicate the investigation." "I am aware," I said. "I have been maintaining normalcy since the moment I heard him." He looked at me, and for the first time I saw something in his eyes beyond professional assessment. It might have been respect. "Then we will proceed." I walked out of the office, back into the bland hallway. I did not feel relief exactly. I felt a shift. The free fall of shock was over. I was now in a controlled descent with instruments and a guide. The fear was still present, a cold stone in my stomach, but it was compartmentalized. Next to it in a separate, stronger chamber was purpose. I drove home, stopping at the market to pick up ingredients for Marcus's favorite meal. The performance had entered its next act. Every action was now dual purpose. The loyal wife shopping for her husband, the strategist laying the groundwork for his defeat. The two women inside me were learning to coexist. One would chop vegetables. The other would, very soon, begin to assemble a case. The scent of seared steak and roasted herbs filled the kitchen. I moved through the familiar space, setting the table for two. The act was automatic, a script I had followed for years. When Marcus walked in, he smiled, the same charming, appreciative smile. He kissed my cheek. "Something smells incredible. Tough day with the supplier." "Productive," I said, plating the food. The linen samples were promising. It was not a lie. I had indeed reviewed samples after my meeting with Eli. The duality of my day was now a permanent condition. The week that followed was an exercise in sustained performance. My life became a series of carefully observed details. I was an actor playing the role of Vivian Thorne, while the real Vivian watched from the wings, taking notes. I began with the financial documents Eli had requested. I accessed our shared banking portal from my home office during the day. I printed statements for our joint accounts, his personal account to which I had view-only access, and the mortgage documents. I noted the balances, the regular transfers. Nothing seemed immediately amiss, but absence of evidence was not evidence of absence. I scanned and sent the files to the secure Dropbox Eli had established. My observations at home became more systematic. I noticed the small things. Marcus had always been casual with his electronics, leaving his laptop on the coffee table. Now he closed it and took it with him to his study each evening. One morning before he awoke, I saw it on his nightstand. The screen was dark, but when I tapped the trackpad, it demanded a password. It was a simple numeric passcode before. Now it required a longer alphanumeric one. I did not attempt to guess it. The change itself was the data point. His phone, which he used to leave face up on the kitchen island, now always rested screen down. It was a subtle shift, one I would have dismissed as paranoia a month ago. Now it was a red flag in a field of green. Our conversations were scripts. He asked about my business with a detached, polite interest. I asked about his work. He spoke in generalities about market pressures and big deals on the horizon. I listened for names, for specifics that might align with a legal strategy. I heard none. I felt like an anthropologist studying a foreign culture in my own home. The rituals were the same: shared meals, evening television, weekend coffee on the patio, but the meaning had evaporated. The warmth was a performance. My responses were lines delivered on cue. The house, with its clean lines and expensive finishes, felt like a showroom. It was not a home, it was the set for our play. I found myself studying him physically, as if seeing a stranger. The way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes when he was distracted. The new, expensive watch on his wrist, a purchase he hadn't mentioned. I filed it all away. 5 days after my meeting with Eli, I found my first tangible thread. I was in my home office, reviewing production schedules. My business paperwork was kept in a locked filing cabinet, the key on my personal key ring. On a shelf above, in a decorative box, I kept older documents, including the original, signed copies of our prenuptial agreement. I had not looked at them in years. I opened the box. The folders were neat, arranged by year. The prenup folder was there. I lifted it out. It felt lighter than I remembered. I opened it. The document was present, the familiar pages with our signatures at the end. But behind it, there should have been the supporting schedules, the lists of our individual assets we had each declared before the marriage. My list had been extensive. The seed money from my grandmother's inheritance, the trademark applications for Thorn and Bloom, the valuation of my initial inventory. His had been simpler. His savings account, his car, his stock portfolio. The supporting schedules were gone. Only the main agreement remained. A cold prickle spread across my skin. I checked the box thoroughly, leafing through every other folder. They were not there. I had not moved them. Marcus had no reason to access them unless he was studying the document he planned to activate. He must have taken them to review, to photocopy, perhaps to share with his lawyer. He had been careful to return the main agreement, assuming I would never notice the missing appendices. This was not conjecture. This was evidence of action. He was actively working the problem, my problem. That night, I accessed his desktop computer in the study. He was playing golf with clients on Saturday. I had a few hours. The computer asked for a password. I tried the old ones I knew. They failed. I did not waste time. Instead, I looked for physical clues. In the top drawer of his desk, under a stack of stationery, I found a notepad. I lifted it and held it at an angle to the light. Impressions from previous notes were visible on the top sheet. I could make out fragments. A phone number with a 212 area code, and a single word written in his decisive script, Peterson asterisk. I wrote the number and the name down on my own pad, then carefully returned everything to its exact position. A name and a number. It was a start. Later, as we prepared for bed, I initiated a piece of dialogue. I was testing the waters, probing for a reaction. I was thinking of consulting with a new accountant for the business, I said, applying moisturizer at my vanity. Things are getting more complex with the overseas suppliers. I need more sophisticated advice. Marcus, brushing his teeth at the en-suite sink, paused. He met my eyes in the mirror. His expression was neutral, interested. That's probably smart. Anyone in mind? Not yet. I'll need to do some research. I watched him. Maybe you have a recommendation, someone from your firm's network. He rinsed his mouth and wiped his face with a towel. I can ask around, but you should choose someone you're comfortable with. It's your kingdom. He smiled, the easy, supportive smile. Then he added, just make sure you vet them thoroughly. You don't want someone who's unstructured. The advice was reasonable. The tone was spousal concern, but the word asterisk unstructured echoed. It felt like a caution against someone who might look too closely, who might ask the wrong questions about our separate finances. Of course, I said, turning back to the mirror. Thorough vetting is essential. I lay awake long after his breathing deepened. The house was silent, a vast, expensive shell. I was no longer just living a lie. I was now actively hunting for the truth within it. Every room felt surveilled not by him, but by my own heightened awareness. The gilded cage had become a labyrinth, and I was learning its hidden passages, one careful, silent step at a time. The fear was still there, but it was now a tool. It sharpened my senses. It made me notice the weight of a missing folder, the significance of an indented word on a pad of paper. I was becoming what I needed to be, a stranger in my own life, gathering the tools to reclaim it. The text from Eli came on a Tuesday morning, 2 days after I had sent him the name and number. It was brief and direct. Have initial findings. Can you meet at the Daily Grind at 2 p.m.? The Daily Grind was a cafe 3 towns over, a place I sometimes used for client meetings when I wanted a neutral, quiet location. Its familiarity was a small comfort. I replied with a single letter, K***. I told Marcus I was meeting a potential retail partner for afternoon coffee. He nodded, already engrossed in a spreadsheet. Good luck. Sell them on the dream, he said, without looking up. I arrived 10 minutes early. The cafe was warm, smelling of roasted beans and baked goods. I chose a corner table away from the window. I ordered a pot of chamomile tea. My hands were steady as I poured a cup, but my pulse was a hard, quick rhythm in my throat. This was the moment the whispered threat would be given form. Eli arrived exactly at 2. He carried a simple manila folder. He nodded to me, ordered a black coffee at the counter, and sat down. His expression was grave but composed. Thank you for meeting me, he said, his voice low. What did you find? I asked, dispensing with pleasantries. He placed the folder on the table, but did not open it immediately. The phone number you recovered is for the offices of Peterson, Vale, and Gross. It's a family law firm in the city. Specifically, it connects to the direct line of Lawrence Peterson. I waited. The name meant nothing to me. Peterson has a particular reputation, Eli continued, his eyes holding mine. He is known for representing high-net-worth individuals in aggressive, often contentious divorces. His specialty is asset identification and maximization for his client. He is particularly adept at exploiting prenuptial agreements, finding loopholes, or invalidating them based on technicalities. He's not a settlement attorney. He's a litigator. He goes for the throat. The air in the cafe felt thick. I took a sip of tea. The warmth did not reach the cold place inside me. So Marcus has hired a shark. It appears so. The fact that his number was written down, presumably after a conversation, indicates contact has been made. This aligns with the clause he mentioned activating. Peterson would be the one to find and exploit it. Eli opened the folder. He slid a single sheet of paper toward me. It was a bank statement, but not from any of our accounts. The header was for a financial institution in the Cayman Islands. The account name was a series of letters and numbers. There were 2 substantial wire transfers listed in the last month, each for $50,000. The source of the funds was obscured, listed only as an intermediary bank. This is an offshore account, Eli said. The transfers originated from a corporate entity that, after some digging, traces back to a shell company. That shell company has a tenuous but traceable link to a venture capital fund your husband's firm has invested in. It's a circuitous route, designed to obscure the origin. But the timing is significant. These transfers occurred after his increased questioning of your finances. I stared at the numbers. $100,000. What is this for? Retainer fees for a firm like Peterson would be in this range. Alternatively, it could be a fund he's building for other purposes. The point is, he is moving money, and he is hiding it. The final piece of paper Eli showed me was a photocopy. It was the asset schedule from our prenuptial agreement, my schedule, the list of what I had brought into the marriage. You said your copy was missing, Eli said. This was obtained from the law firm that drafted the agreement at my request. I compared it to the digital footprint of your business growth. Peterson, or someone on his team, has also requested these records from the firm within the last 3 weeks. They are building a timeline. They are documenting the value of your business at the time of the marriage and its growth since. He paused, letting the information settle. The strategy is becoming clear, Ms. Thorne. They will likely argue that the dramatic growth of Thorne and Bloom during the marriage constitutes a joint enterprise, that your husband's indirect support, the stability of the marital home, perhaps even casual advice, entitles him to a significant portion. They may also be looking for any procedural error in the prenup's execution. Their goal is to have it set aside entirely. With it gone, and with your assets commingled in their narrative, he could claim 50% or more of everything. The offshore money is likely his war chest or his escape fund. I looked from the bank statement to my own asset list. The numbers and words blurred for a second. I felt a profound detachment. The theory was now fact. The fear solidified into a cold, heavy certainty. This was no longer about suspicion. It was about documented action. He said by next month, I said, my voice flat. That gives him 3 more weeks. Approximately, Eli agreed. He will be finalizing his evidence, coordinating with Peterson. The filing could happen at any time after that. Once the papers are filed, certain assets could be frozen immediately. I looked out the cafe window at people passing by, living their normal, unexamined lives. I felt a door close inside me, the door to the marriage, to the woman who had trusted. What remained was a clear, open space filled with a single imperative: survive, win. What is my next step? I asked, turning back to Eli. You have 2 immediate needs. First, you require your own legal counsel, not a generalist. You need a lawyer who is a match for Peterson, someone in forensic family law. I can provide a few names. You must retain them discreetly. And the second, we continue to gather intelligence. Now that we know the players, we can focus our surveillance. We need to confirm meetings, obtain stronger evidence of the conspiracy. A recorded conversation would be ideal, but that is difficult and legally sensitive. Your priority is to secure your legal defense and begin your own financial lockdown. I nodded. The path was clear. The initial shock was gone, burned away by the cold light of facts. I felt a strange calm. Send me the names of the lawyers. I will contact them today. What do you need from me to continue the surveillance? Access to his calendar, if possible. Details of his upcoming movements. We will monitor his meetings with Peterson. I'll get them, I said. I finished my tea. The herbal taste was faint, meaningless. Thank you, Eli, for the confirmation. He nodded, gathering the papers back into the folder. Confirmation is the first step. The next steps are harder. I already knew that, but the vague dread had been replaced by a defined enemy and a concrete plan. The chessboard was laid out. I could finally see my opponent's pieces. It was time to move my own. From the cafe, I drove to a small park. I needed a quiet place to make the call. Eli had sent 3 names. I researched them quickly on my phone. One stood out, Eleanor Vance. Her firm specialized in high-stakes matrimonial law with a focus on forensic accounting and protecting separate business assets. Her biography noted she had previously worked on cases involving attempts to invalidate prenuptial agreements. She was a counter to Peterson. I called her office from the prepaid phone. I gave a false name for the appointment scheduler, citing a referral from a financial advisor. I was given a consultation slot for the following afternoon. The location was a discreet office building in the financial district. The next day, I told Marcus I was visiting a flagship store that carried my products to review their display. He wished me a productive trip. Eleanor Vance's office was the opposite of Eli. It was sleek, modern, and quietly powerful. Vance herself was a woman in her 50s with sharp gray eyes and an air of unflappable competence. I dispensed with the false name and presented my real identification and a summary of my situation. I showed her the documents Eli had provided, the bank statement, the evidence of Peterson's involvement. She listened, took notes on a tablet, and asked precise, clarifying questions. When I finished, she steepled her fingers. "Peterson is aggressive and thorough," she said. "His standard playbook is to attack the prenup's validity while simultaneously arguing for commingling and unjust enrichment. Given the growth of your business, he will claim your husband's emotional and domestic support was a material contribution, thus entitling him to a share of the appreciation. The business was built before him and has grown because of my work," I stated. "I understand, but the law can entertain creative interpretations. Our immediate tasks are twofold. First, we fortify the prenuptial agreement. We obtain affidavits from the original lawyers affirming its proper execution. We document the complete separation of finances from day one. Second, we initiate protective financial measures." She outlined a plan. I would begin, immediately and quietly, to move liquid assets from any joint accounts or accounts he might know of into new, secure accounts at a different institution. I would also formally document, with my CFO, the non-involvement of Marcus in any business decisions. I would gather every email, every record that showed I alone managed Thorn and Bloom. "You must also consider your personal safety net," Vance added. "Ensure you have access to funds he cannot touch. Do you have a personal safe deposit box?" "I do." "Place originals of critical documents there. Update your will and powers of attorney, removing him. These are defensive moves. They will not trigger alarm but will protect you if he files suddenly." I agreed to everything. I retained her on the spot, paying a retainer from my business account. As I left her office, I felt the first sense of structural security. I had a legal fortress under construction. The following days were a delicate ballet of deception and action. At home, I intensified the performance. I became more physically affectionate. I would touch Marcus's arm while speaking, kiss his cheek unexpectedly, initiate holding hands on the sofa. I complimented him more. I expressed gratitude for his hard work, for providing a stable home that allowed me to focus on my little crafts. I used his dismissive phrase back at him, wrapped in a veneer of self-deprecating warmth. He absorbed it, his posture relaxing, his smiles becoming more genuine. He was being lulled. The hunter believes he is alone in the forest. Meanwhile, in the hidden channels of my life, I worked. From my home office, I initiated wire transfers. I moved funds from a joint money market account into a new account under only my name at a separate bank. I contacted my investment manager and redirected dividend payments. I accessed the safe deposit box and added the copies of the evidence from Eli, Vance's contact information, and a USB drive with digital copies of every critical document. I also began keeping a hidden notebook. It was a simple, unlined journal I stored in my locked filing cabinet. In it, I recorded my actions and his. I wrote down the dates and amounts of transfers. I noted his late nights at the office, his increased golf outings. I wrote down the lies I told him, each one a small stitch in the shroud I was weaving. One evening, he came home particularly buoyant. He poured himself a drink and kissed me warmly. "Big things are happening at the firm, Vive. Really big. It could mean a huge bonus. Maybe that vacation to Tuscany we talked about." I smiled, pouring myself a glass of water. "That's wonderful, Marcus. You deserve it, all your hard work." Inside, I calculated, a bonus would be marital property. It would be a claim, another thread to potentially tie me down. "When would you hear?" "Soon, couple of weeks, maybe." His eyes were bright with greed. I wondered if the bonus was real, or if it was a story to cover the movement of other funds, or simply to bolster his image as the prosperous provider before the strike. "I'll start looking at villas," I said, my tone light, a performative gesture of a shared future. You do that, my love. He sipped his drink, looking out at our manicured backyard, already, I thought, seeing it as his sole possession. Later in my notebook, I wrote, mentioned Tuscany vacation, possible misdirection, bonus story, verify timing with firm's public earnings call. I was no longer just defending. I was building a parallel structure, a new life hidden inside the shell of the old one. Every polite conversation was intelligence gathering. Every affectionate touch was a strategic feint. The woman making pasta in the kitchen and the woman wiring six-figure sums were the same person, but they occupied different planes of existence. One was for show. The other was for survival. The detachment was now complete. I felt nothing for him but a cold, analytical focus. He was a problem to be solved, a threat to be neutralized, and I was now fully engaged in the solution. The call came a week later. Eli's voice was measured, but I heard a new tension in it. We need to meet, today, same place. My stomach tightened. I had been maintaining the facade, moving assets, documenting everything. I had even booked fictitious villa inquiries for Tuscany. I drove to the cafe, my mind racing through possibilities. Had Marcus filed early? Had he discovered my new accounts? Eli was already there, a folder on the table. He didn't wait for me to order. We've been tracking his movements, he began, his voice low. He's had several meetings with Peterson at the lawyer's office. That was expected, but he's also been meeting with someone else, a woman. He opened the folder. Inside were surveillance photographs. They were taken from a distance but were clear. Marcus, exiting a restaurant downtown. Beside him, a woman in her early 30s, attractive, dressed in a sharp business suit. They were not touching, but they were walking close, engaged in conversation. In another photo, they were sitting at a cafe table, leaning in over documents. A cold, familiar pain lanced through me, sharp and humiliating. The cliché I had somehow believed I was above. The other woman. My hands felt numb on the table. I stared at the photo of her laughing at something he said. Who is she? My voice was flat. We're working on identification. She meets him during lunch hours, sometimes for coffee. The meetings are professional in setting, but the frequency is notable. I thought you should know. I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. I had prepared for financial annihilation, but this felt like a separate, more visceral violation. A personal disdain added to the predatory greed. How long? I managed. 3 meetings in the last 10 days. We only just picked up the pattern. I took a deep breath, forcing the hurt into a compartment. I examined the photos again, clinically this time. Get her name, everything about her. We will. I left the cafe feeling hollowed out. The drive home was a blur. I walked into the silent, perfect house, and for the first time the performance failed me. I sat on the bottom stair, my head in my hands. The betrayal was now multidimensional. It was not just my money he wanted. It was a replacement for me already waiting in the wings. The narrative wrote itself. The older, workaholic wife replaced by a younger, fresher model. He would take my money and my dignity. I allowed myself 10 minutes of this. Then I stood up. Self-pity was a poison. I needed facts, not stories. I went to my home office, locked the door, and opened my hidden notebook. I wrote the date and a single line. Eli reports I'm meeting younger woman. 3x in 10 days. Awaiting ID. When Marcus came home, I studied him. Did he look guilty? Lighter. He kissed my cheek, asked about my day. I answered, my affection now a heavier mask. I was watching for a tell, a sign of his double life. 2 days later, Eli called again. We have her name. Can you meet? We met in a different location, a quiet public library study room. Eli's expression was grim. He slid a single sheet of paper toward me. It was a printout of a LinkedIn profile. Chloe Renard. The photo matched the woman in the pictures. Her headline read, Forensic Accountant and Business Valuation Specialist. Peterson, Vale, and Gross. I read it twice. The words rearranged themselves in my mind. Forensic Accountant, Business Valuation, Peterson's firm. She's not a mistress, Eli said quietly. She's a hired specialist. Peterson likely brought her in to conduct a covert valuation of Thorne and Bloom, to build their case for asset commingling and unjust enrichment. The meetings are to receive updates, provide documents, guide her analysis. The relief was instant, then washed away by a deeper, more profound chill. It wasn't about another woman. It was about my work. He was having my life's achievement professionally appraised for dismemberment. He was spending our marital funds, perhaps the hidden offshore money, to hire an expert to pick my business apart, cell by cell, to prove it was partly his. A sound escaped me, something between a laugh and a gasp. I pressed my hand to my mouth. The humiliation shifted form. It was not personal rejection. It was impersonal destruction. In a way, it was worse. "He's valuing me," I said, my voice hollow. "Like livestock or a piece of real estate." Eli nodded. "It confirms the strategy. They are building a detailed, expert argument to take your company. This is a calculated financial siege. The intimacy of the betrayal is in the coldness of it." I looked at Chloe Renard's smiling professional photo. She was just doing her job. A well-paid job funded by my husband to eviscerate me. The enemy had a face, and it was this pleasant, competent stranger. "What does this change?" I asked, my voice regaining its steadiness. "It gives us a new focus. We know a key player. We can attempt to understand the scope of her investigation. More importantly, it removes an emotional variable. This is purely business for him. Your counter-strategy should be the same." He was right. The last lingering fragment of sentiment, the wounded wife, dissolved. What remained was pure, clear opposition. He was a hostile force. I was the defending entity. This was a transaction, and I intended to win it. I drove home, the initial pain gone. In its place was a sharper, more focused resolve. I had been bracing for a messy, emotional divorce fueled by infidelity. Instead, I was facing a corporate raid. My opponent had outsourced his due diligence. It was time to refine my own defenses. That night, I was more affectionate than ever. I asked about his work, rubbed his shoulders, played the devoted fool. He was so confident, so smug in his secret expertise. He never saw the calculation in my eyes. He saw only the mask, and the mask was perfect. The realization that Chloe Renard was a forensic accountant did not bring peace. It brought a new imperative. I had been playing defense, hiding assets, building legal walls, observing his moves. Defense was necessary, but it was a holding pattern. It would not win the war. To win, I needed to control the battlefield. I needed to make him move in a way I could predict and exploit. I scheduled a joint meeting with Alina Vance and Eli Grant. We met in a secure conference room at Alina's firm. It was the first time my two allies were in the same room. The dynamic was professional, focused. "We have confirmation of his strategy and his team," I began, laying out the latest findings. "He is having my business professionally valued to support his claim. His lawyer is Peterson. His timeline is within the next 2 weeks. My defensive preparations are nearly complete, but I want to shift our approach." Alina leaned forward. "Shift how?" "From reactive to proactive. I want to bait him. I want to present a vulnerability so tempting that he and Peterson will accelerate their plan, and in doing so, make a mistake or reveal their hand more clearly." Eli nodded slowly. "A controlled piece of misinformation." "Exactly. I am thinking of a financial vulnerability, something that would make Thorne and Bloom appear suddenly unstable, and therefore, an asset he needs to seize control of immediately before it loses value. If he believes my company is about to crash, he will push to file before that crash diminishes his share." Alina considered this. "It's risky. If the misinformation is too convincing, it could spook your actual suppliers or clients if it leaks." "It will not leak. It will be a document meant for his eyes only. A draft contract, perhaps, showing a major partnership falling through at the last minute due to a fault in our production. It would show a massive, imminent loss. I will let him discover it." We spent an hour designing the trap. Alina drafted the language for a fake letter of intent from a fictitious European retailer, followed by a subsequent email chain citing critical, unrecoverable quality failures in a shipment, leading to the cancellation of the multi-year contract. The financial figures were substantial, enough to suggest a severe blow to profitability and growth projections. The documents were crafted to look authentic, using my company's letterhead and email templates. Eli's role was surveillance. You need to plant the document where he will find it naturally. His home office is the logical place, but we also need to witness his reaction. We need to see him take the bait. Can you install a camera? I asked. It's legally sensitive, but possible in a common area of the home. The study is arguable as shared space. I can install a small, discrete device. It will give us visual confirmation. I agreed. The following day, while Marcus was at work, Eli came to the house. He installed a tiny camera in a bookshelf, positioned to view the desk. It was motion-activated. I planted the decoy document in the middle drawer of the desk, beneath a stack of financial journals. It was placed where Marcus would see it if he was looking for something else, but not so obviously that it would seem staged. That evening, I set the hook. Over dinner, I let a carefully constructed fatigue show. Long day, Marcus asked, his tone perfunctory. A bit stressful, I admitted, pushing my food around my plate. A big deal we've been working on for months hit a last-minute snag. The logistics are a nightmare. I might be buried in it for the next week. His interest sharpened. A big deal, the one with the French chain. I had never mentioned a French chain. I had only spoken vaguely of European expansion. His specific guess told me he had been paying more attention to my business chatter than I realized, cataloging information for his own purposes. Similar, I said, evading. I don't want to jinx it by talking too much. It's just a lot of pressure right now. I offered a weak smile. Sorry, I'm poor company tonight. He reached across the table and patted my hand. Don't worry about it, Vive. These things happen, you'll sort it out. His touch was condescending. He saw not my stress, but an opportunity. 2 days passed. I accessed the camera feed through a secure app Eli had set up on my phone. I watched Marcus enter the study each evening, work at his computer, make calls. He did not open the drawer. On the third evening, I provided another nudge. I accidentally left my personal laptop open on the kitchen counter, displaying a draft email to my CFO with the subject line, Contingency Plans Laurent Project. The body was blank, but the subject was enough. I saw him glance at it. Later that night, the motion alert chimed softly on my phone. I was in bed, pretending to sleep. Marcus had gone downstairs for water, he said. I opened the app. There he was at the desk. He was opening drawers, not frantically, but with purpose. He found the stack of journals. He lifted them. He saw the folder beneath. He pulled it out. He opened it. I watched his face on the small screen. His initial expression was curiosity. Then, as he read, it changed. His eyes scanned the pages quickly. A slow smile spread across his face, not a smile of sympathy, but of pure, unadulterated satisfaction. He took out his phone and took pictures of several pages. He carefully returned the folder to its place, rearranged the journals, and closed the drawer. He stood up, his posture erect, energized. He left the study, turning off the light. I lay in the dark, my heart pounding not with fear, but with a fierce, cold triumph. The bait had been taken. The predator had smelled blood in the water, my blood, and he was moving in for the kill. The hunter was now the hunted. I had dictated his next move. For the first time since I heard that whisper, I felt a sense of control. The game was no longer on his terms. He was running straight into the trap I had built. All I had to do now was wait and watch and be ready to spring it. I watched the camera feed for 2 more days. Marcus's behavior shifted. He became brisk, distracted. He took more calls in his study with the door firmly closed. He left for work earlier and returned later. The performance of the attentive husband became thinner, more strained. He was a man finalizing plans. The bait was working. On the 3rd day after he found the document, my prepaid phone buzzed with a call from Eli. His voice was taut, urgent. You need to come to the office. Now, it's important. A chill that had nothing to do with fear spread through me. It was the cold of imminent confrontation. I'm on my way. I told Marcus I had an emergency meeting with my fabric supplier about the quality issues. He barely looked up from his tablet. Handle it, he said, his voice absent. He was already elsewhere, in a future where my emergencies were not his concern. The drive to Eli's office felt both endless and instantaneous. My mind was clear, emptied of everything but anticipation. Eli was waiting, his face solemn. He didn't speak, just gestured for me to sit. On his desk was a digital recorder. He pressed play. There was a rustle, then Marcus's voice, clear and cold. It was not the voice he used with me. It was his business voice, the one of calculated aggression. Another man's voice responded, older, smoother, dripping with a practiced, ruthless confidence. Peterson. Peterson, the valuation from Renard is solid. She's documented the appreciation trajectory beautifully. Combined with the prenup vulnerabilities we identified, the argument for commingling is strong. But this new information, this Laurent project collapse you discovered, this is a gift, Marcus. Marcus, it's more than a gift. It's a ticking clock. If the business is about to take a multi-million-dollar hit, its value plummets. I don't want half of a sinking ship. I need to file before that becomes public. Secure the assets at their current valuation. Peterson, agreed. We accelerate. We file next Friday. We'll serve her at her office. Simultaneously, we file an ex parte motion to freeze the business accounts and the joint assets, citing risk of dissipation due to the impending business failure. The judge will see the documents you provided. They paint a picture of imminent collapse. She won't be able to move a dime. Marcus and the prenup. Peterson, we attack on 3 fronts: improper execution, lack of independent counsel on her part. We'll argue she was emotionally coerced, and the fundamental change in circumstances due to the business's growth being a joint marital effort. With the company suddenly looking unstable, the judge might be more inclined to grant interim relief in our favor, which puts pressure on her to settle on our terms. Marcus, good, I want this clean. By the end of the month, it all needs to be settled. I'm tired of playing house. Peterson, you'll be a very wealthy man, Marcus. Just remember our fee. Marcus, it's in the account. Next Friday, then. A click, the recording ended. The room was silent. I could hear the faint hum of Eli's computer. I felt nothing. No rage, no sorrow. It was as if the recording had injected a pure, antiseptic clarity into my veins. Every doubt, every shred of lingering hope was erased. Here was the blueprint of my destruction, spoken in his own voice. How? I asked, my voice disturbingly calm. He met Peterson at a private club. One of my contacts works there. He placed a device on their table. It was a high-risk maneuver, but given the timeline, we needed confirmation. Eli's eyes were watchful, concerned for my reaction. Next Friday, I repeated. That was 1 week from today. His original, by next month deadline, precise to the day. He would have me served at my place of work, a public humiliation, while simultaneously strangling my business's finances. I looked at Eli. I need copies of that recording, multiple copies. One for my lawyer, one for a safe deposit box, one cloud backup. Already done. He slid a small USB drive across the desk. This is for you. I picked it up. It weighed nothing, yet it contained the complete, irrefutable truth. Thank you, Eli. This is what we needed. What will you do? He asked. He plans to file next Friday. I will file this Thursday. My lawyer will serve him at his office. We will include a copy of this recording in the filing, along with all evidence of fraud, malicious intent, and his hidden financial maneuvers. We will seek not just a divorce, but damages. We will also seek a restraining order on any asset freezing based on his demonstrable bad faith. I laid it out like a project plan, because that's what it was. Eli nodded slowly. You're going to take his plan and use it as the weapon against him. He built the case for his own greed. I'm just presenting it to the court. I stood up, the USB drive clenched in my hand. There's one more thing. I need to confront him. After he's served, but before he can react. I need to see his face when he understands the game is over. Be careful, Eli said. Cornered animals are dangerous. He's not an animal, I said, turning to leave. He's a businessman who just lost. I know how to handle those. I walked out into the afternoon. The sunlight was bright, ordinary. I drove to Alina Vance's office. I played her the recording. Her professional composure didn't break, but I saw a flicker of cold satisfaction in her eyes. "This is definitive," she said. "We draft the filing today. We serve him Thursday morning at 10 a.m. I'll coordinate with a process server. You should confront him Thursday evening after he's had the papers for several hours. He will have contacted Peterson by then, and they will be in panic mode. That is the optimal time." Optimal, the word was perfect. This was no longer about emotion. It was about optimal outcomes. That night, Marcus was home late. He barely spoke during dinner. He was mentally already in his victory next Friday. I smiled at him, the loving, oblivious wife. Inside, I was counting down the hours. The cold truth was no longer a burden. It was my armor and my sword, and in 5 days I would wield it. Thursday arrived. I dressed with deliberate care, choosing clothes that were both professional and assertive. I had a scheduled video call with my design team at 9. At 10, according to Aliner's plan, a process server would enter the sleek glass tower of Marcus's finance firm and deliver the divorce petition to his office. I would be on my call, my face a mask of calm. The call proceeded. I discussed fabric swatches and production timelines. My phone, face down on my desk, lit up silently at 10:07. A text from Aliner, served. I continued speaking for another 20 minutes, concluding the meeting. Then I waited. My personal phone rang at 10:42. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called again, and again. On the 4th attempt, I answered. My voice was steady, neutral. "Yes." "What is this?" His voice was a whip crack, breathless with rage. "What the hell are you doing?" "I believe you have received legal documents," I said. "You should review them with your attorney. Lawrence Peterson, I believe." A stunned silence. Then, "You have no idea what you're doing. You're making a catastrophic mistake." "The only mistake was yours," I replied. "We will speak tonight, at home." I ended the call and blocked his number for the remainder of the day. I spent the afternoon in a state of focused tranquility. I finalized the transfer of the last joint assets. I packed a suitcase with essential items and placed it in the trunk of my car. I removed my personal documents from the home office. At 5 p.m., I positioned a small digital recorder on the bookshelf in the living room, activating it. Then I waited. He arrived at 6:30. The front door slammed. His footsteps were heavy, rushing. He found me in the living room, standing by the fireplace. I had not changed. I stood calmly, my hands at my sides. His face was flushed, his eyes wide with a chaotic mix of fury and panic. He held the thick legal packet in one hand. "You foolish woman," he spat. "Do you have any concept of what you've just done? This fantasy of yours, claiming fraud, emotional abuse, it's laughable. Peterson will have this thrown out and then he'll bury you. You've just handed him everything." I said nothing. I let the storm of his words crash against my silence. "You think you're clever," he continued, his voice rising. "Hearing some ambulance-chasing lawyer, I have Peterson. I have a forensic valuation. I have proof that your little business is about to implode. By next week, you'll be begging me to settle." That was my cue. "By next week," I repeated, my voice quiet. "Your deadline." I walked to the bookshelf and picked up the recorder. I held it up. "You should be more careful about where you discuss your deadlines, Marcus." His eyes locked on the device. His confidence wavered, replaced by confusion. "What is that?" I pressed play. His own voice filled the room. "This Laurent project collapse you discovered, this is a gift, Marcus." I watched the blood drain from his face. He took a step back, as if physically struck. "We file next Friday. We'll serve her at her office, freeze the business accounts, citing risk of dissipation." "Turn it off," he whispered. "I want this clean. By the end of the month, it all needs to be settled. I'm tired of playing house." "Turn IT off," he roared, lurching forward. I stopped the recording and placed the recorder back on the shelf, out of his reach. "The fake documents worked as intended," I said. "You led your lawyer right where I wanted you to. The court now has a recording of you conspiring to commit fraud, to file false declarations, to illegally freeze assets. The offshore account transfers are documented. Peterson's involvement is documented. Chloe Renard's valuation was for your case, not mine. Every move you made is in that filing." He stared at me, his mouth agape. The rage was still there, but it was crumbling into something else, shock, then dawning horror. You set me up." "I defended myself," I corrected. "You declared war. I simply won the first battle, and every subsequent one." He sank into an armchair, the legal papers spilling from his hand onto the floor. "You can't prove." "It's already proven. The evidence is with my lawyer and the court. The filing requests full dissolution with all marital assets awarded to me due to your malfeasance. It seeks damages for fraudulent behavior. It also, I should mention, includes a report to the Bar Association regarding Peterson's ethics in this matter." He was silent for a long minute, his breathing ragged. The polished facade was gone. In its place was a desperate, cornered man. "What do you want?" he finally asked, his voice hollow. "I want you to leave. Tonight, the locks will be changed. You will communicate only through a leaner Vance. You will agree to the terms as presented, which are more generous than you deserve. If you fight every piece of this, the recording, the financial scheming, your plan to ruin me becomes public. Your firm will hear it, your colleagues, your golf partners. I doubt they look kindly on a would-be thief who gets caught." He looked up at me, and I saw genuine hatred there. But beneath the hatred, defeat. He knew. The house of cards he'd built was gone, blown apart by his own recorded words. "You bitch," he said, but the words had no force. "Get out, Marcus." He stood slowly, unsteadily. He looked around the living room at the art, the furniture, the life he had planned to steal. He no longer saw an asset. He saw a crime scene. Without another word, he walked to the door. He paused, his hand on the knob, but did not turn around. Then he opened it and stepped out into the night. I listened to the sound of his car starting and driving away. The silence that followed was vast, but it was not empty. It was filled with a profound, resonant quiet. The performance was over. The battle was won. I walked to the recorder, stopped it, and placed it with the USB drive in my bag. There was no feeling of euphoria, only a deep, solid certainty. It was finished. I was free, and everything at last was mine. The silence after Marcus left did not last. It was filled with the practical sounds of change. I changed the locks that night. The following morning, I met with a leaner Vance. The legal process, fueled by the evidence we had, moved with a swiftness that spoke to the strength of the case. Marcus, through Peterson, made a few blustering counterdemands, but when a leaner played them a segment of the recording and outlined the consequences of a public trial, they folded. The settlement was finalized within weeks. He received a modest sum, far less than he had envisioned. He kept his car, his personal accounts, and his debt. I kept everything else: the house, my business, all investments. The prenuptial agreement stood, reinforced by his own actions. There were no lingering ties. It was a clean, surgical severance. I sold the marital home. It held no warmth, only the memory of performance. With the proceeds and my secured capital, I purchased a smaller, sun-filled loft downtown. The space was open, with large windows. I made it my home and my new corporate office for Thorne and Bloom. The design was mine alone: warm woods, textured fabrics, vibrant art from local makers. It felt authentic. Several weeks after the settlement was signed, I met Eli at a cafe near his office. It was a different place from where we'd had our first tense meetings. This one was bustling, full of light. He stood when I approached. We shook hands, then he gestured to the chair. "You look well, Vivian." "I feel well," I said, and it was true. I ordered a coffee. "The final paperwork came through yesterday. It's done." I heard, "Congratulations." He sipped his own drink. "How's business?" "Thriving. The new collection is our best performing launch. It turns out having full control over your focus and finances is good for growth." I offered a small, genuine smile. "I owe you a great deal, Eli, more than the fees covered." He waved a hand, a modest gesture. "You did the hard work. You kept your head. You made the decisions. I just provided the road signs." "You provided the truth when I needed it most. That has value beyond any price." I reached into my bag and withdrew a small, flat package. "This isn't payment. It's a thank you, from my company to you." He opened it. It was a handcrafted leather journal, the cover tooled with a simple, elegant pattern of intersecting lines. Inside, I had written, "For recording the truth. With gratitude, Vivian." He ran his fingers over the leather, his usual professional reserve softening. "This is fine work. Thank you. I'll use it." We talked for a while longer about inconsequential things. The weather, a new restaurant. It was the first normal conversation I'd had in months that wasn't part of a strategy. It felt easy. After we parted, I walked back to my loft. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the drafting table where new designs were spread. Next to them was a different set of papers, a preliminary business plan for a nonprofit initiative. I was calling it the Foundation. It would offer grants and mentorship to women over 40 who were starting their own businesses. It would focus on practicalities, legal structures, financial literacy, protecting personal assets. The lessons I had learned, packaged to prevent others from needing to learn them the hard way. I sat at my desk as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I did not think of Marcus. His face, his voice, his betrayal had receded into the past, a closed chapter. The anger was gone, fully spent. The sadness, too, was a distant memory. What remained was a solid sense of self, rebuilt from the ground up on a foundation of my own making. The phone rang. It was my production manager, confirming shipments for the new line. I handled the call, my voice confident and clear. After, I made a note to call Alina tomorrow to finalize the foundation's legal structure. As dusk deepened into night, I felt no loneliness. The space around me was filled with my own choices, my own work, my own peace. I had not just survived the plot to erase me, I had used its blueprint to construct something stronger. The next morning, I woke early. I made coffee and stood at the large window, watching the city slowly brighten. The first rays of sun touched the glass, then spilled across the floor of my quiet, secure space. I felt a gentle, unforced smile on my face. It was not a smile of triumph, but of quiet readiness. The past was settled. The present was mine. The future was a blank page, and for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to writing it.